Hello, hello, and welcome back to yet another podcast of My 2 Cents. And it's been a while. I, I I think I should just make this my opening phrase. It's been a while because I'm always late. Um, Again, I'm gonna try to record two or three this week, but I cannot guarantee that. And today I have some different things to talk about. Last episodes, I guess I was a little bit more aggressive than usual. Of course, when I say aggressive, I just mean that I wasn't trying to be nice. I was just trying to give my opinion. Supposedly, this can offend some people, and I understand that. Um, I feel like, for example, um, something that always grinds my gears, something that I talked about last class, it really grinds my gears, is how people just, I don't know, man. They think that their opinion is to be untempered with. They think like they have the right to have any type of opinion that they want to without repercussions. The first is true. You can have whatever opinion that you want, um, but not without repercussions, you know? Obviously, not without repercussions. I don't know why people would even think that. It's just like saying freedom of speech means you can say anything. No, it doesn't. I know the word freedom means freedom, but freedom of speech means that it has to be for everybody, not just for you. And I think most people they confuse, they mess it all up. They think freedom of speech is just something that should be you talking about whatever you want, saying whatever the hell you want, without concerning yourself whether or not it's true, whether or not what you're saying can actually harm people. I'm not even talking about insults here. I'm talking about when we have a political figure that is just making claims, you know, that are not proven. Maybe eventually it will be proven that this person was correct. But listen, if you're a political figure or a public figure in general, and your opinion matters, which is the case of presidents, you know, your opinion matters. People will listen to you. So these people should be extremely careful as to what they are talking, as to what they are just saying to the public. And I think that we have cases, a former case in the United States and a current case here in Brazil, where I don't think they care much. Actually, they do care, but not about telling the truth. They have their own strategy, they have their own agenda, and it seems more often than not that they really don't care whether or not people could get hurt or that they could cause more harm than good by saying what they say. Um, and I'm gonna give an example of something I talked to a student this week. We talked about hydroxychloroquine, which is just this supposed um, medicine that you can take and that will help with the treatment of COVID when you're just starting to have your symptoms. That's basically what it is. And some people said, "Oh, you should take it because even if it doesn't help you, it doesn't matter because it cannot harm you." And then later we realized that yeah, it can harm you. It 100% can harm you. Some people proven later, unfortunately, very unfortunately. Again, when I talk about this stuff, I'm not glad that it's happened. It's something that I'm just not glad to be correct about. Really not glad that I'm correct about this stuff. But some people died of cardiac disease and arrhythmia, people that had heart problems. Apparently, hydroxychloroquine aggravated these problems. I'm gonna link in the description a video. The only problem is that this video is in Portuguese, but it points to a research that is in English. I can put that in the video. because I'm just giving my 2 cents. But these 2 cents, at least today, it's not often that I do that, but at least today they are based on something that is concrete, that is factual. And I'm trying my best to go against something that is not factual, something that is not concrete, something that apparently people say, again, um, they're always appealing, oh, it's my freedom of speech to say that, and if you tell me I cannot say that, it's censorship. And even though I do agree that censorship is something very, very, very serious, and we should be worried about exactly how censorship works, but you, again, just being able to tell whatever the fuck you want, no matter how stupid it is, I don't think is the solution at all. And obviously, a lot of people disagree, both progressive and conservatives. They disagree with these statements that freedom of speech should be tempered with. I think it should when you're invading someone else's space, because then you are not giving them their freedom. You know, you are invading their space. So, freedom should be where I'm not actually harming anybody. This is where I have freedom of speech. I can give my opinion. For example, this is what I'm doing here. And I'm again being very careful so I do not offend anyone. But um, if I do, and if I were a public figure, like let's say this podcast one day in the far future gets some attention. Not saying hugely famous, but it gets some attention. And then there's an audience, and then there's more than just half a dozen people that listen to me. Maybe we have a lot of people that listen to this podcast. I would have to be extra careful to what I say. And I think people just want to profess their opinion no matter what. There are some YouTubers that I enjoy that I even mentioned before, and they talk about freedom of speech, and they say like is this ultimate thing that cannot be tampered with, that cannot be messed with, that cannot be blocked. Otherwise, it's just censorship. And how can you measure censorship? How can I know where my censorship begins and yours stops? So it's just a complicated issue to talk about, especially in a podcast such as this. I'm just saying, again, if you are a political figure or a public figure, you should be careful because your words will be heard. And again, with hydroxychloroquine, I don't know, honestly, I don't know how, but there are still people today that defend this medicine. I mean, we have the scientific community telling us for over a year now how it isn't effective and how it can do more harm than good. So obviously it's not worth it. But I don't think people care. They just don't care. I see that a lot of people that are not necessarily scientifically literate, they think science is a matter of opinion. And we talked about this before. It is not a matter of opinion at all. It's just not. And I don't know. I just feel like somewhere in the school system, these people failed. I'm not gonna say that the school system failed because even the school system here in Brazil, they teach us that the person failed to learn it. It's very easy to just blame, oh, it's the education system's problem. No, it's the person's problem. They didn't learn it properly. Probably they didn't pay attention, or they didn't study right, or they just didn't think it was important information. And now they become these adults that think that you can politicize medicine. I heard exactly a person saying these words, and I mentioned this in the last podcast. I'm sorry to talk about this again. It's just an ongoing subject, and it's been bothering me because this week people talked about this once again, and I'm like, dude, no, no. You should be able, as an adult, you have the right. Like when we are talking about teenagers, I get it, all right? I get it. Teenagers are not fully developed yet. They still figuring out themselves, let alone the world. But when you are an adult, you should be able to discern whether or not you are listening to fake news. You should have critical thinking. You should have the ability to discern whether or not that information is true. And if you don't know it's true, don't take it as your personal cause. Like you can say, hey man, I read an article talking about this, but I'm not 100% sure whether it's true or not. So this is my 2 cents, for example. Um, Again, even though this is the name of the podcast, when I say that science is not a belief, science is something you study and you learn, and from then on, you can talk about it. This is not a belief, this is a fact. If you think science is a matter of belief, I'm sorry, but you do not understand the first basics about what is science. First of all, science is not a person. Science does not represent political alignment or nation alignment. Obviously, some researches are funded and sponsored by nations, governments, and private companies. However, the research is just an operation of data. That's it. People are just analyzing data, and as a result, they come to their conclusions. And the types, sorry, of research that are done are based on these sponsorships. Obviously, the research has to have some interest behind it, but the results should not. It should be impartial. The research should be impartial. The results should be impartial. And then the company that sponsored it or the government that sponsored that research can then consciously choose whether or not that research is relevant for them or that shows the results that they were looking for. But the research itself is impartial. Specifically, when we are talking about science in the medical community, when you're talking about infectologists, biologists, doctors, physicians, we are talking about people that are just worried about saving lives. They don't care. And I don't know if you guys know this, but even in wars, doctors were impartial. Like a doctor from Germany, let's say, would be attending to a soldier, a fallen soldier from, I don't know, France or whatever. It wouldn't be a nation thing, it would be just a human thing, you know, because that's doctor's job. They should save lives, and that's what they're trying to do nowadays. But oh, for fuck's sake, we still have these politicians just screwing everything up. And if you never heard about hydroxychloroquine, a little bit over a year ago, there were, sorry, two researches. One from France and one from China. These researchers were searching for a type of pre-treatment that you could apply to COVID victims with a medicine called hydroxychloroquine. And then they released these research. They released the data, they released the results, very positive results, I might add, towards hydroxychloroquine. However, just however, yeah, they fail to mention several parts of the data that they omitted. They failed to mention they didn't follow all the guidelines that you should in a controlled testing like this, in a clinical testing. They didn't do randomized tests. They didn't use placebo patients. So the whole thing was just a hoax. And it's very interesting because one of the companies that funded the research, guess what? It was a pharmacy company responsible for producing hydroxychloroquine. So they had the interest in the sponsorship, and so far so good. But when you tamper the results of a research and you release it, um, the scientific community speaks out. That's the thing. That's why a scientific article on its own, it's not enough evidence. You need to see how it is perceived by the scientific community. And if the scientific community, if the science as an institution, which is the representation of this community, does not agree with the results shown, then it's not worth a look, then it's worthless, then it's just useless. And yet, again, people take these things seriously. Um, because I remember when these researches came out, Trump took an interest to that, disregarding completely what scientists at the time were talking about this research, condemning the researchers behind this research. He still took it to his own to just make it public that hydroxychloroquine was effective and instigating Americans to buy it and to prevent themselves from to get disease or to even make the disease worse over time and all that. However, eventually, Fauci, which was the head of I guess, the health minister department. I'm not sure the exact name. I'm sorry about this, guys. I know how they are called in Brazil, how the ministry is called in Brazil, but I'm not sure in the United States. But I know that Fauci, which was the head of the department, just somehow, I don't know how, but somehow he was able to convince Trump that hydroxychloroquine, eventually, he was able to convince Trump that hydroxychloroquine was useless and worthless. And then he donated, I guess, millions of dosages, I guess 2 million dosages to where? Brazil. And when I say donated, he sold it. All right, we paid for those dosages. And because Bolsonaro was also in the hydroxychloroquine train, he even made advertisement for the medicine even after the North American president had already discarded this medicine as being relevant. And this was a year ago. I still have students that talk about this and friends that talk about this medicine as if it was reliable. And science is interchangeable. So eventually, if it is proven and accepted that given the correct conditions and given the correct compound, maybe we mix that with something else, I don't know. If it is proven that hydroxychloroquine can be effective, then by all means we should start using it. But so far, every single scientific article that has been released has been refuted by the scientific community. And I don't know why it is so hard to explain that to people, why that is relevant. Because these people, it's not like they are stupid. They're not. It's not like they don't believe in science because they do. They go to the doctor. And you know what? If you use a cell phone, you believe in science. All right? And again, it's not a matter of belief, but I'm just saying, you credit science enough to use a cell phone, to use a computer. You credit science enough to not question your internet. You use science enough to go to the doctor when you're sick, to go have a surgery when you need one. So you use science 100% of the time in your life. You just don't know it, or maybe it's just convenient that you pretend that you don't know it. And this is just a short podcast, whatever. This is the final of this season. I'm gonna start doing something different for season two. So these last two episodes were just rants, basically. At least last episode I talked a little bit about relationships. Today I don't feel like it. And again, these are just my 2 cents.